Sky Athena, and today I'm bringing you my Tis-the-season-a-thon wrap up. I had wanted to dress like this for my TBR video, but I totally forgot. Tis-the-season-a-thon was a readathon that ran from the 3rd of December to the 9th of December, and it had a couple of challenges, and in this video I'm going to tell you what books I read and stuff like that. So the first book I read was Alle Schietocht by Elsa Biscow, and I read this book for the challenge of read a book with red or green on the cover. This is sort of like a picture book, illustrated book, and my parents read this to me when I was a child, I believe. I may have also read it before on my own, I'm not entirely sure, I can't quite remember. It was very nostalgic to read this again, as I remembered more things going through the story and looking at the illustrations. Because it's quite short, it didn't take me that long to get through it, but it was really nice to read this story again. The story is about a young boy who gets a pair of skis from his father. He then goes skiing and a sort of adventure develops. The next book I read was Een ijskoud vriendje by Tom Verlaine, illustrations by the Chunky. I read this book for the challenge to read a book while listening to holiday music. It was, on the day that I read this, not cold enough to start our heater, so in the end I ended up listening to the Yule log on YouTube. This book is pretty short, so I was able to do that. The book is about Tobias, who moves from Ghana to the Netherlands in the winter. He has never seen snow before, and this is quite an experience for him. He meets a talking icicle. This was a nice children's story, and I enjoyed reading it. Then I read Donald Duck Pocket 216, Een Wonderlijke Kerst, and I read this book for the challenge to make you feel warm and fuzzy. All of these stories had some kind of seasonal or wintry or Christmassy theme, as far as I can remember, and aside from feeling all festive from it, I also felt nostalgic, because while I haven't read these specific stories before, I have read stories about most of these characters before, and so it was nostalgic to read about them again. I'm going to the books relatively quickly because we have a lot to get through. Then I read Badpad, De Bevroren Mammoet, and I read this book for reading a short book. This book is 128 pages, so I'd say it qualifies for that. This book was not as wintry as I was expecting. It was enjoyable, however. This book is about Badpad, the talking bat, and he lives with 3 siblings, and they go on a sort of little adventure when there's some kind of fair, and they go into a hot air balloon which accidentally flies up without the, I don't know, what do you call the driver? Without the person who's supposed to attend it. So it's the 3 children in the hot air balloon with the bat, as well as one other person, a girl that they just met, and so they go on a little adventure. This book was nice, I enjoyed it. It was not really wintry in any way, though. I had thought that because the title is the Frozen Mammoth, but it was not that wintry or anything. But that's fine. Next up, I read Een Magische Kerst by Geronimo Stilton. I did not realize it when I did my TBR video, but once I started reading this book, I realized that I had in fact already read it at the library. So this was actually a reread for me. Had I known that beforehand, I wouldn't have picked this book to read, but I enjoyed rereading it. I read this book for the challenge of reading a festive read, and this definitely accomplished that for me. It made me feel all warm and fuzzy and festive, also with all the sort of Christmassy illustrations. But here is one. That one's not maybe too Christmassy, but this story is about Geronimo, and his grandfather is making him work on Christmas Eve. Then he and his grandfather and his cousin and his sister, they meet 2 elves, and the story develops from there. This was a nice read. I was a little bit disappointed in the beginning that I had in fact already read this book, so I knew what was going to happen, but it was still nice and festive, and I enjoyed reading it. After that, I read De Nieuwe Knecht van Sinterklaas by Christine Deeltjes and Erika Gottelier, and I actually read this book on the 5th of December, which is when it's Sinterklaas's birthday. This book is about Sinterklaas, who is very, very busy bringing getting all the presents to the children, so he is looking for a new helper. This book was written in 2005, which was before the whole discussion was there whether Pete should be black or not. I talked about that in my TBR video, so I won't really go into that again. I found this story very nice. One thing that did bother me a little bit was that in a few occasions it seemed to be that when the skin color of a person isn't mentioned, it's usually assumed to be white, and when it is mentioned, that it's black. So yeah, I can't entirely remember, but if I remember correctly, there was that element of white is default to it, and I did not like this. I did like, however, the rest of the story. It was magical, more so than I had imagined, and yeah, I quite liked it. It's pretty big for a book for young children. Yeah, I enjoyed reading this. Next up, I read Sinterklaasverhalen by a whole variety of authors that I can show you some of them right here, but I don't really want to read up all their names, and we don't really have time for that. So this was all sorts of short stories and poems and songs to do with Sinterklaas. Again, the Pete's are brown skin tone on this cover, but we have talked about that before. This book was published in 1996. That was before I think that discussion was there, but I talked about that in my TBR video. This book was a bit of a mixed bag for me. I liked some of the stories, I was less keen on others. Most of the stories were relatively short, only a couple of pages. Now the text, I will say that the text is pretty, no, the text is normal. I mean, the pages are pretty big, but what I really found with this book is because there were quite a few short stories and they were all a few pages long, that after reading so many of them, I found in the end I didn't really remember a lot of them, and it was just too much different inputs in too little time. I think with a collection like this, what would work better for me is to actually only read like 1 or 2 stories each day and then spread the reading out over a longer period of time. I think that would be better for how I work. It worked better with Snow and Love, which I also read, and I will talk about that in a few minutes. So yeah, this was kind of a mix. Then I had Kinderverhalen und Kerstmis on my TBR. However, after reading all the short Sinterklaas stories, I did not feel like reading another book with short stories that are only a few pages long. So I ended up not reading this book. I might still reread it later in December, but I'm not sure yet. We will see. After that, I picked up Queer, a graphic history by Meg John Barker and Julia Schelen. This was a bit different than what I had imagined. It talked a lot about queer theory, which I hadn't heard of before I started this book. The book taught me a lot about, I'm not sure if that would be like sociological or how exactly that would be called, but I liked the illustrations a lot. I liked that there was attention for different kind of diversities in the book. So that also when you see illustrations of that, you also had like a person in a wheelchair and people with various skin tones and stuff like that. The book talked also as well as on the history of queer theory. I will say I didn't know much about it, and I wouldn't be able to explain it to you, to be honest. What I will say is that I read the first, I don't know, maybe 3/4 of this book on one day, and I was feeling okay when I read that. I mean, a bit tired, but not too tired. But I read the last part of this book on an evening, like day after or something, I think, when I was very tired. And so I did not really understand much of what I read, and I couldn't really grasp what they were saying. I think this is more me than the book, because after that I tried to do some other things and that didn't work out either. So I think it's just that I was way too tired to understand such a complex issues that are going on in society and history and all that kind of thing. So I don't think it was the book, but well, I wanted to mention it anyway because it was part of my reading experience. I learned a lot, but the book was different than what I was expecting it to be, and I'm not sure that I can entirely really explain it, what it was exactly like. The next book is Blue is the Warmest Color by Julie Moreau. I'm not sure if you pronounce it that way. This is a graphic novel about a female-female relationship. It is about Clementine, who is growing up and who falls in love with a girl, and yeah. I really like the illustrations of this. And it was quite unique in that, let me see if I can find a page. I should point out, there is some nudity in this graphic novel. So if you're very young or not comfortable seeing that, then just know you're warned. I don't know exactly what YouTube's policies are on that, so I'm gonna make sure I don't accidentally show something that could... What I liked about the art, for example, is that a lot of the colors are very sort of mild, but then the blue really stands out. The blue hair of this girl that Clementine falls in love in. Her name is Emma. So I quite like the art. I was a bit less keen on the story because there were a couple of decisions that the characters made that I just thought, how could you do this? This is stupid. I can't really... One decision in particular, and I can't really tell you why without spoiling it, because it happens relatively like later in the book, so I don't want to spoil it. But yeah, that was kind of... I found that a bit weird, and the plot developed from what happened in that scene. So yeah, I wasn't quite on board with that. And also I thought the ending felt a little bit rushed. I did like this graphic novel otherwise though, so it was an okay read. Now we're going to talk about Snow and Love, which was the group read of this readathon. This readathon, by the way, coincided with the readathon of my friends, so I also did that. Anyway, so Snow and Love was 4 short stories by these 4 authors, and I read the short stories a bit spread out. So I read one story on one day, another story another day, etc. And I will talk about the short stories a bit more in detail now. The first short story was by Casey West, and it was called Snow and Mistletoe, and I love this one. This was my favorite of the collection. This is about a girl who gets stuck at an airport because there is lots and lots of snow and all the flights have been cancelled. And so she goes on a road trip with these people that she meets, and she knows one of them from school. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I have never read anything by Casey West before. I will definitely be picking up something of her now because I really like this short story. It was yeah, warm and romantic and yeah, cute, and yeah, it was just, I really liked that one. Next up we have Walking in a Winter Wonderland by Amy Friedman. And this is about a girl who ends up working at a department store for Christmas. But she is Jewish, so she celebrates Hanukkah instead. And I was a bit meh about this story. I would have liked more mention of Hanukkah. But I did like all the descriptions of like the department store. What I didn't like about it so much is that the romance happened like very soon at the end and kind of came out of nowhere. And so I liked like the middle bit, but the ending felt a bit rushed and like we have to put the romance in, so let's make this happen, if that makes any sense. So I wasn't that keen on that story. The third story was The Magi's Gift by Melissa de la Cruz, and I did not like this story. And I made some notes because I had quite a lot to say about this story. Well, first off, some things that were said or thought by the main character in the first few pages really pissed me off, and I was considering DNFing this story, but I thought, well, I've only read a few pages. Let's try it anyway. It seems a bit over, you know, like I didn't really try if I DNF it after 3 pages. But some of the things the main character thought there really, it just grated on me. So I would like to tell you, because I'd like to tell someone. The rest of the story was also not great, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So in the first few pages, the main character of this story, whose name is Kelsey, which I think is a really nice name and is honestly the best thing about this character because I really didn't like her. In the beginning of the story, she says that she is the most beautiful girl in the whole school, and that the popular girls can't call themselves the beautiful people without counting her among them. Now, this is me summarizing it, but using a few of the same words. And I found this a really arrogant statement. It goes on a little bit beyond that, but I'm just giving you the short version. And for a number of reasons. Because I personally believe that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I think it is extremely arrogant to say that you are the prettiest girl in the school. And I really don't like arrogant people or arrogant characters, for that matter. Then I'm wondering, has she actually met everybody in the whole school and judged them by their beauty as she sees it? Then there is something as outside beauty versus inside. I personally believe if you are a kind and nice and warm, lovely person, that shines through to your outside. And whereas if you're an arrogant person, that then you can't, then I wouldn't call you beautiful, if that makes sense. Because, yeah. Then another thing I would like to mention is I was bullied as a child and as a young teenager. I was called all sorts of ugly words. Yeah, I'm reading this from my notes. Including the Dutch word for ugly. And it took me a long time, years in fact, to realize that you are ugly is an opinion, not a statement, not a fact. It is a statement. You are ugly is an opinion and not a fact. And I still have trouble with this sometimes. And finally, there's more to life than outside beauty, in my opinion. Kelsey, the main character, also mentions a little bit later in the story that she doesn't like to see her boyfriend, his name is Brendan, in his normal clothes, and that she would prefer it if he wore a tux every single day. Now, it's okay that she thinks he looks nice in a tux. That I have no problem with that. But I think if you really love someone, you love them, you know, regardless of, well, what they wear for one, but also the clothes a person decides to wear on a normal everyday basis. That is about who they are, except maybe if people have not much money or means to buy or get clothes. In that case, but like, how can she love him and not like how he's normally dressed? Like, I don't know if that makes sense. It was mostly just, she called it his usual outfit of a concert t-shirt and a bunch of other things references that didn't make sense to me. I think there's certain clothing brands and stuff. I presume it's just a certain type of trousers and then like a jeans jacket. And yeah, I know she sounded to me like she was a bit vain, if that makes sense. So anyway, I didn't like that. She seems very focused on fashion and designer and really expensive clothes, and I'm not into that. I see no reason why clothing from like a cheaper brand should automatically be less in any way than expensive stuff, and it certainly is not always less good looking, in my personal opinion. And also, she cared what these popular girls think. They are way richer than she is, and so she cares what they think of her because she can't afford all the really expensive clothes. And when I say really expensive, it's like she wants to buy these shoes that are, I can't remember if they were $400 or $600 or something like that. I think $600. And like, well, yeah, I have no words. I also had problems with some of the things that happened later on in the story, but those would be considered spoilers. This story did not make me feel festive in any way, and I didn't like the writing. I'll hold the book up again, and it was just no. Okay, I'll move on now because I've been talking about this story long enough. The last story was Grounded by Nick Stone, and this is about a girl who gets stuck at an airport. And this story had a female romance in it. It had some talk of racism in it because the two main characters, so the main character and the other person, are black, and or at least are dark skinned. And I liked this. I was not sure if there would be much other than the Hanukkah. If there was much other diversity in this book. I was hoping there would be like a queer love story in it. And I'm glad that there was. And I also liked that we had some representation of people of color. I quite liked this short story. I didn't love it as much as the first short story, which was by Casey West. But I also, I thought this story was cute. It was romantic. I liked the poems that are in the story. and part of the story is told in a text format. Let me see if I can find, well, saying that this happens at the beginning of the story, so that's not a spoiler. And so because of that, it read a bit quicker, and that was nice. I hadn't read anything by Nick Stone before, though I believe, yeah, I have a book by her. I have a book by this author on my TBR, so I still have that to read. Yeah, I have Dear Martin on my TBR. So overall, I really liked 2 of the stories, the first and the fourth one, and I really did not like the second and the third one. Well, the second was meh, but the third one was just, oh no, I'll never be rereading that. So overall, the collection was, I guess, a bit of a mixed bag, but I'm still glad I read it because I really liked the first and the fourth story, and they felt very festive, so yeah. And then the second story was meh, not something that I'll look forward to ever rereading, but I had a few issues with it, but it was still okay. But yeah, I didn't like the third story, so yeah, we're almost done. Then I read The Witch Boy by Molly Knox Ostertag. This is a fantasy graphic novel for middle grade children, and it has some very nice and colourful art. And it's about a boy named Aster who wants to be a witch. In his family, all the girls become witches and all the boys become shapeshifters. And he has no talent for shapeshifting, and he wants to be a witch. I quite enjoyed reading this graphic novel. I really like the art. Yeah, this was definitely a nice read. Yeah, and I will be picking up a sequel. It does end, so there are no cliffhangers or anything like that, if that's something you're worried about. It's something that I often worry about, because I don't like it when a book ends on a cliffhanger and then you have to wait like a year or more before getting to the next book. I really don't like that. So I was glad that this book just had an ending, and I think I will be picking up the sequel. I haven't read the synopsis yet, so yeah. Then the last book I read was The Bright Was a Boy by Chi. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And this is a manga memoir. That's not something I would ever thought to say. I had no idea that such a thing existed, but I mean, why not? I guess what we would call a graphic memoir, but it reads from right to left. I don't know if it's officially classified as manga or not, but either way. This is about a woman who is assigned male at birth and grows up as a boy in her childhood, and then a bit later in life she transitions, and it is also about her wedding with her husband. And I like this book. I didn't like 100% absolutely love it. I have read hold on one second. I have read Transmission by Alex Berti, which is also a memoir on his transition, and I would say overall I prefer this one to this one. Oh, sorry, this one. I found, but this is just a normal, let's say, text book, and it has quite a bit more pages and explain things a lot more. Of course, there is a difference in that. Sorry, this is about transgender woman, and this is about transgender men. So yeah. Anyway, I like this book. I thought the illustrations were really nice. On occasion, like, the story felt a little bit... Well, I should point out that this is actually based on, like, I'm not sure, a daily or a weekly or whatever comic the person used to put on their blog, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and that she then turned into a book. And you can tell because it feels a little bit disjointed in a few places, going from one section to the next. The book did give some information in... Let me see if I can find an information page. Well, here is one, for example, where there is some more text. Not all of this was new to me because, as I said, I've read other books and other internet resources on this subject. But I thought it was good that the information was in there. I would have liked this to be longer. It is 155 pages, and I guess I would have just liked a bit more detail, but I did like it, and it was cute, and so yeah. Also, it was Queer Lit Read-a-thon the past, not the exact same days as the Tis-the-season-a-thon. There was, I think, one day shifted, but that was one of the reasons why I read 3 queer books, or 4. I'm not sure if you can count that, which book really is that, but it does discuss gender norms. So, and then there was one more book on my TBR, Crush by Svetlana Chmakova, but I didn't get around to this because I finished this like Sunday end of the day or something, like end of the afternoon, I think just before dinner. So unfortunately I didn't get around to reading this, which I was a little bit disappointed at that, because I was looking forward to reading this. But now I'll get to read it another time, perhaps during the next readathon that I have with my friends, a monthly readathon. So yeah. Hey, just a quick in-between message. I just want to say, in total I read 1,999 pages this readathon and 12 books. Well, that was a long wrap up. If you've watched it all the way through, thank you very much. I read a lot of shorter books, and also a lot of them were for children. But this just works better for me for a readathon, so I hope nobody minded. I will probably read more like books for adults and young adults like later in the month. I don't know exactly when this video will go up, but I'll try to get it up soon. Thank you very much for watching. I really enjoyed participating in this readathon, and it was fun to see other people's videos on like how it went for them and what they read and things like that. I still have some more videos to watch when I'm recording this, though by the time that you watch this I will probably have seen like today's videos at least. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!